Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. This past week, we had almost 100 solo shots added to the Solo Shot Swag tracker. Thank you to our friends at Only Homers for collecting the data and allowing me to use part of it to support the name of the show and keep track of a fun stat that I think is really overlooked, because in the three common outcomes of baseball, a home run, a walk, and a strikeout, the solo home run doesn't get talked about much at all. I think it's a skill within itself. Usually hitters are judged on how good they hit with runners in scoring position. But I think when a pitcher has the bases completely free and is pitching to you and you're able to knock one out of the park, that takes a whole nother level of solo shot swag. So really awesome to keep counting those up. There's been some really big days for solo shot homers. There's been a lot of repeat names on there. And I think at the end of the season, I will give out the awards for the longest solo shot, as well as the solo shot king for 2023, the man who hit the most solo shot home runs in the 2023 season. As you can see from the intro, sticky stuff strikes again. Future Hall of Famer Max Scherzer was ejected in the fourth inning against the Dodgers after umpire Phil Cousy said that his glove was too sticky. We went through this already when Major League Baseball decided to crack down on spider tack and the other illegal sticky substances, and said that you will be checked between innings by the umpire. If you have any illegal substance on you, you can be ejected, and there's an automatic 10-game suspension, which for a normal player doesn't seem like a lot. You're not going to be playing 162 games. But for a pitcher, especially a starting pitcher, that's 2 or 3 starts that you're missing out on. And you're also hurting your team there with the suspension. So seeing Max Scherzer clearly frustrated after the game, he told reporters that he was told early in the game to wash his hands thoroughly because the rosin was clumping up and making it too sticky. He said he washed his hands with alcohol and soap and water in front of an MLB official, went back out there, was told that his glove had too much rosin residue on it still, and to change gloves. He changed gloves, and then he was still thrown out of the game. I don't know how many of you listened to the aforementioned Trevor Bauer's podcast and YouTube channel. I don't agree with what Trevor Bauer has done as a person, but his insight into the routine of a major league pitcher was eye-opening to me. And talking about the sticky stuff, you need the grip to get the crazy movement that you see in today's pitching. You need some sort of grip. You can use sweat, sunscreen, and rosin, which the rosin bag has been in baseball for decades. And some guys were going past that and using spider tack and other types of gels for no reason. And that's when Major League Baseball decided to step in. They felt that that was an unfair advantage for the pitchers. And now, after everything has kind of blown over with the pitch clock, there's very few pitch clock violations now. They are cracking down on the sticky stuff again. And I think that's a problem. Major League Baseball, if you want your games to continue to be quick and these guys are doing the right thing, I'm entitled to say Max Scherzer was innocent until proven guilty, that he was using just rosin, which is completely legal. And the fact that he was asked multiple times throughout the game, hey, wash your hands, change your glove, and he complied and still got thrown out and given the 10-game suspension automatically, I think is a real just bad spot for Rob Manfred when there was so much positive news about baseball. One of the Red Sox games finished in under 2 hours. It had been going really well with the new rules. The ratings were good. The stats have been just as good, if not better, especially in the stolen base department. And now the attention is getting thrown towards sticky stuff with pitchers again. With the pitch clock, with how quick these games are going, with how much control the pitcher has of the game, I understand that if they're using an illegal sticky substance like a spider tack with the pitch clock, that could be an even greater advantage than it was pre these new existing rules. But when a guy tells you he's using rosin and the entire game, they're not throwing him out for clear use of another substance, it just does not look good. Max Scherzer said that he will not be appealing the suspension because he would not be getting a independent arbitrator. It would be through an MLB arbitrator, basically making an example out of him and possibly extending the suspension. So Max Scherzer is just taking it on the chin, and the Mets lose their ace for the next 10 games. It's a shame. The Mets were already low on pitching as Justin Verlander started the year on the IL. And now you have a future Hall of Famer who was very much for these new rules that you had with the pitch clock, and he liked how you can control the game, now getting in trouble for the old rules when there's no clear evidence that he was using something to break them. It's a shame that this is one of the top storylines. I didn't want to completely lead the show with this, but it's something that I think Rob Manfred needs to be put in check about. Pitching is so important in today's game. Pitchers aren't able to go as deep into outings, whether it's because of restrictions that the teams put on them, the velocity that they're throwing, or now with the pitch clock, how many pitches they're throwing. They're throwing more pitches per inning with this new rule because they have to throw faster. And suspending a guy in a big game, Mets Dodgers like that, it just isn't a good look in my opinion. And I think that Max Scherzer, when he comes back from this little vacation, is going to dominate and shut some people up that decided to go at him about this issue. But sticky stuff is back, and I have a feeling that Max Scherzer will not be the only person getting in trouble for a sticky substance. Domingo Germán of the Yankees had a very strange situation with a substance during his start, and I have a feeling as the pitchers adapt to the pitch clock and try to get creative, you're going to see some guys trying to get an edge, and hopefully the guys that are actually breaking the rules get caught, and you don't have any situations where a guy is using what you're telling him to use, following the umpire's requests, and still getting thrown out of the game. On a positive note, first base here, the small markets are buzzing in baseball this year. Not only is Milwaukee one of the hottest teams in baseball, I was very high on them during my preseason predictions. I had them just missing the playoffs, but had them winning some individual awards and being in the hunt the entire way. Their pitching is legit, and their lineup was already good, but the implementation of Bryce Terang and Weimer, they are going places, and Garrett Mitchell, this team is deep now. A team that is always good, but didn't quite have the depth. So when Christian Yelich would get hurt or a star would get hurt, they'd really be hurting. Now they have the depth, I think, to get through the tough months of the season and really go places. They're one of the hottest teams in baseball. As you can see in the power rankings below, I didn't move them up, but I didn't move them down. My top 7 stayed the same. I feel very confident about those 7. I moved a lot of other people around. It's still too early in the season for me to have anyone make a catastrophic drop. So no team moved up or down more than 3 in my power rankings. But as the months go on, I'm going to be doing a recap after the first full month of the season on next week's episode. I can start really making assumptions about what these teams are, the injuries that have been sustained, and what small market teams that are exciting right now are for real, and which ones are kind of just a flash in the pan. But as we continue, the Arizona Diamondbacks are one of the most fun teams to watch in baseball this year. Not only because they have great pitching with Zach Gallen anchoring the rotation, but the new rules have been to their advantage. The speed that they have with Jake McCarthy and Corbin Carroll, their offense has been legit. I have a feeling that the Diamondbacks are going to be in it for the majority of the season, and a huge move designating Madison Bumgarner for assignment didn't come as a shock to many people because Madison Bumgarner is not the Bumgarner of old. But I think that was a clear sign that ownership wants to win. And they thought that by having Madison Bumgarner out there every fifth day, they were throwing one game a week away. Now getting him out of there, whether they call someone up or trade for somebody, I think that just gives them a better chance to win games. And I think it shows that this small market team is willing to eat some money for the betterment of the potential for this roster. And that's a really awesome thing to see if you're an Arizona Diamondbacks fan. Christian Walker, that whole team is, I think, going to continue to ride this momentum into at least the All-Star break. And that's really fun. And the other big one, I wasn't super impressed when they swept my Boston Red Sox, but the Pittsburgh Pirates are a fun team to watch. Brian Reynolds might end up getting traded because the Pirates don't like to pay their guys, and he is having a phenomenal start to the season. But seeing the impact that veterans like Andrew McCutchen returning and Carlos Santana have had on this young roster, losing O'Neal Cruz and not really missing a beat. Johan Oviedo has been dealing as a true potential number one starter for a small market team. I think ideally he's your number two in a good rotation. But this team is really fun. The Pirates just have an energy about them right now that I haven't seen since the McCutchen days in the early to mid 2010s. And that's really exciting. Pittsburgh has not had a ton to root for with the Steelers' struggles. And of course, the Pirates being irrelevant. You're relevant right now. And I don't know if this Pirates team can keep up the momentum. I don't know if they're going to sell off these older pieces and get hauls back to continue their rebuild. But enjoy the ride while we have it. Andrew McCutchen is pushing for 300 career home runs and 1,000 career RBIs. And I think that if he has a hot season or two here in Pittsburgh to round out his career, he's a legitimate era committee candidate for the Hall of Fame one day. He's got that MVP in his back pocket, consummate professional, and a guy that truly at his peak was considered one of the top 5 players in the game. I think people forget that a lot because he's been kind of that third, fourth outfielder the last 5 years. But he's really impacting both with his play and his leadership on the young Pirates team. So these small markets, they're buzzing. Baltimore has been awesome. Their years of retooling and rebuilding and gathering young talent has seemed to pay off, and they're really in the hunt this year after having a huge jump in record from 2021 to 2022. And the small market teams being in it this early is really fun for me to see personally. I think it's better when all the teams are competitive. And like I said at the beginning of the season, everybody's in it, and that's a beautiful thing. But when we talk about small markets and we talk about everybody's in it, the Oakland Athletics have been subpar, to say the least. I have had them dead last in my power rankings. They walked 17 batters in a single game. And it's been clear for a few years now that the ownership there clearly does not care about winning or selling tickets. But with that all being said, the Oakland A's are one of the most historic franchises in the history of baseball. I know for newer and younger baseball fans, that is interesting to hear. But they started off in Philadelphia as the Philadelphia Athletics, had great players like Jimmy Fox play for them. They moved to Oakland in 1968, I believe. Won 3 World Series in the 70s, was in a few World Series in the 80s, had plenty of inner circle Hall of Famers come through, from Ricky Henderson to Raleigh Fingers, Jim Catfish Hunter, the list goes on and on. Reggie Jackson, of course. But the Oakland A's, at least so recently, have just not cared. They went from the Moneyball plan that everyone knows, the famous movie. It's actually my favorite baseball movie of all time. I think Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill do a fantastic job in that movie. But that movie kind of leaves out some big characters, both the amazing Oakland A's pitching staff that was there, as well as some of the other homegrown stars in Miguel Tejada and Eric Chavez. They were built on using analytics to be smart with free agent signings to build around their young players, their homegrown talent. But now, like some of these other small market teams, they're kind of just a minor league affiliate for the big market teams. They develop these players and end up not paying them and trading them off to the Los Angeleses and New Yorks of the world. And Oakland has just been content with having small profit margins, not selling out the stadium, not being competitive, signing guys when they're way past their prime and nobody wants them, just to have a name to come and see. And I think they are the epitome of, I didn't know so-and-so was playing for the Athletics. Because every year you see guys that are just wearing that Oakland A's uniform, no chance to compete. And it's a really sad day when you hear that they have put in a formal assignment to buy land in Las Vegas to build a new ballpark. It's clear that the A's were not going to be in Oakland forever. But to really tank and not try while you clearly are working on moving the team in the background, well, when we move to Las Vegas, there'll be a better chance for profits. And if we're bad before and we're better in Vegas, we'll be looked as an up-and-coming team. But that's just sad for the fans, because even when you don't sell out, there's still fans locally and all over this nation that care about A's baseball. And making them suffer through really poor seasons just so you can tuck the money away and pack your bags and go to Vegas, it's a real shame. I just hope when they make the move to Las Vegas that they end up keeping the name Athletics. I think the Athletics need to be a team in baseball, whether it's Philadelphia, Kansas City, Oakland, and now Vegas. The Athletics, I think, should be a franchise. They have great uniforms, an amazing iconic logo, and passionate fans that have been around for decades following this team through the ups and the recent downs. Vegas is going to be very good for them, with the talk of an expansion in Salt Lake City, with the Athletics announcing that they're moving to Vegas. Do not be shocked if another team comes into the mix, because having 2 expansion teams and a team moving to Vegas in a 5-year span would make a lot of sense for Major League Baseball from a profit perspective, as well as hyping up baseball nationally, being able to reset those TV contracts that I talked about last week with Salt Lake City. And a thing that I didn't touch on is when the NHL had their expansion team, they allowed the NHL teams to protect a certain number of players. And then the rest of the players were thrown into a giant pool which the Las Vegas Knights and then Seattle Kraken were able to draft players from and take them away from other teams. I think that would be really interesting if, say, the 40-man roster, and then you add 10 players to that, maybe your top 10 prospects or the prospects that you value the most, and then all the other players outside of your top 50 guys get put into a pool for the Salt Lake team to draft and for the Nashville or other expansion team to draft as well. I think that could be really fun. And I think that would also just give a lot of more prospects the opportunity to play in the major leagues and make a name for themselves. There's so many deep farm systems in baseball right now. And I think that there's plenty of young major league talent. You're seeing it across the league, whether it's Jordan Walker, Anthony Volpe, Jared Kelenic, who was a top prospect, is finally starting to break out. There's a lot of talented guys that just need the opportunity to try and make it at the big league level. And I'm excited for the future of baseball. It's a sad day for all Oakland fans. I feel very sorry for you, the way that the ownership has handled it. I think it's truly unfair. But we have to live in the reality. There's going to be a team in Vegas. Hopefully it's still the Athletics. There's going to be another expansion team coming, most likely two, to keep the leagues even. And I'm just really excited to see what Major League Baseball has for their master plan moving forward. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of possibilities that are really exciting to brainstorm about. I had a few options for throwback third base this week. As we round third base, I try to throw back to this day in Major League Baseball and just something that I really find interesting and want to talk about. I could have went back to the first ever National League game in the late 1800s, but there wasn't quite as much information as there was about this day, April 22nd in 2008. John Smoltz, at 40 years old, becomes the 16th member of the 3,000 Strikeout Club. And I know a lot of you know John Smoltz from his announcing. Newer baseball fans especially only really know him from his announcing. And some people really do not care for his announcing. I think he's a fine announcer. Not my favorite guy. But some people really are negative about John Smoltz because of the job he does in the booth. But John Smoltz is one of the most impressive pitchers in Major League Baseball history. When he struck out the 3,000th batter in the fourth inning, he was 40 years old. He struck out 10 batters in that game. The sixth fastest pitcher to get to 3,000 strikeouts in terms of innings. The only pitchers that were faster were Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, Roger Clemens, and Curt Schilling. That's pretty amazing. And then you compound it with the fact that even though John Smoltz suffered many injuries, including later in that 2008 season, a shoulder injury that ended his final tenure with the Braves before playing his last season out with the Red Sox and Cardinals in 2009. John Smoltz is the only pitcher in Major League Baseball history with over 200 wins, over 150 saves, and over 3,000 strikeouts. He was a Cy Young pitcher as a starter, and he won the Rolaids Relief Award for the best reliever in Major League Baseball while he was the Braves closer in the early 2000s. This man was a big game pitcher. He showed up in the postseason, and he compiled really great stats all around despite many setbacks in his career. And I think part of the reason he's overshadowed is because for many years he was in the greatest rotation ever assembled to some people, with Greg Maddux and Tom Glavine and Steve Avery and those 90s Braves. And they were really fun to watch. But John Smoltz especially, I feel, gets overlooked. He's a really great guy. I enjoy his work on MLB Network. But as a pitcher, being the sixth fastest to 3,000 strikeouts, doing it in so few innings, and doing it at 40 years old after all the injuries, the amazing start that he had to the season with the Braves in 2008, getting to do it in front of the home fans, it just meant a lot to him, and it means a lot to Major League Baseball. Since he joined the 3,000 Strikeout Club as a 16th member, 3 future Hall of Famers have passed him: CC Sabathia, Justin Verlander, and Max Scherzer, who we talked about earlier today with the sticky stuff. There are 2 pitchers that are approaching the 3,000 Strikeout Club, who I also believe will be in the Hall of Fame one day. Zach Greinke, who is 101 strikeouts away. He's really having a lot of fun this year with the pitch comm and the pitch clock. He's just a really quirky dude, and seeing him work this year has been a lot of fun. Even when he's getting destroyed, he will still throw 50-mile-per-hour curveballs and really mess with hitters and the clock. So I've really enjoyed watching Zach Greinke, and I hope that he gets to 3,000 this season. But the next man is Clayton Kershaw, who is 160-something, I think 67 strikeouts away from 3,000. So he'd have to probably play next year as well, even though in his 200th career win, he did have 9 strikeouts, which was fun to watch. Some vintage Clay Kershaw, as they like to say, Clayton Kershaw. It is amazing to watch a Hall of Famer work like that. Pitching is truly an art form, and seeing Clayton Kershaw dominate in that fashion to get his 200th win was really cool. But you look at it, and Clayton Kershaw is 35 years old, and he just got his 200th win. We talked about the 3,000 Strikeout Club, how 3 people have gotten there since 2008, and there's another 2 on the way. But when it comes to 300 wins, the way that pitchers are used today, will we ever have another 300-game winner? I know during the offseason, Justin Verlander said that his goals are to play till he's 45 and get 300 wins. That's why he wanted to go to a contender, and he wanted to pitch. He's already able to start the year. Hopefully, when he gets off of it next week, he comes out firing. But Justin Verlander is still at 244 wins in his career. That's a lot. 200 wins is a ton in the major leagues. But the fact that 300 used to be the benchmark for you're a slam dunk Hall of Famer and all-time great if you get 300 wins and pitch long enough to get that, it's just not a thing anymore. It's hard enough to get quality starts out of pitchers with how hard they're throwing and the movement and the analytics that the batters are able to use against the pitchers. So when they're seeing a guy 2, 3, 4 times, it becomes easier for them to time up their pitches and figure out what they're going to throw in what situation. It is hard to be a major league pitcher nowadays. The stress on your body. Jeffrey Springs needs Tommy John surgery. He was throwing lights out for 2.5 starts, but he threw his elbow out. And it's a shame to see all these talented pitchers struggling. But with the Tommy John surgeries and the rotator cuffs and different shoulder injuries, you see the finger and ankle setbacks. Being a pitcher and compiling for 200 wins, let alone 300 wins, is an anomaly. I don't think we're ever going to see a 300-game winner again. Just the amount of wins and the type of team they'd have to be on to even attempt to be on pace is insane. And I do think that people will look to the strikeouts now as the automatic qualifier. 3,000 strikeouts already kind of was an automatic qualifier, but it wasn't looked at the same as 300 wins. I think as the years go on, 3,000 strikeouts will be the compiling stat that is looked at as the top dog for major league pitchers, because striking people out is such an integral part of the game. And as we get another couple of guys in these coming years in that club, it will grow to over 20 which is really exciting considering that only a few years ago in 2008, John Smoltz was the 16th person to do it. I really appreciate each and every one of you for stopping by. Enjoy another beautiful weekend of baseball. For more takes, you can follow me on Twitter at DominicMana44. Make sure to like, subscribe, tell a friend, and I'll see you next Solo Shot Saturday. Peace.